Alright, it's been a while since I've done something like this. Um, Several months actually. Just had a thought last week and I thought to make a quick video of it. Now, here's my disclaimer. This is my belief. What you believe is what you believe. I'm not saying this is the absolute Bible truth. This is just something that has come to me. And I do know the scriptures talk about no private interpretation, stuff like that. But the scriptures also say out of Jesus' own mouth, to whomever can receive it, let him receive it. He was talking about John the Baptist being the Elijah to come. He said, whoever can receive it, let him receive it. In other words, there are some of you who just aren't going to get it. Obviously, there are some of you who don't get it because you still say that Elijah is one of the two witnesses in the book of Revelation. Elijah shouldn't even come out of your mouth because Jesus said that Elijah has already come. So again, whoever can receive it, let him receive it. Similarly, in Revelation says, whoever has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. And elsewhere in Revelation it says, to whomsoever has an ear, let him hear. So I get if you're not really going to grasp this, but some of this stuff, I'm not going to cover the things I've covered in other videos, like when I talked about Babylon, how Babylon is two. A religion and a nation. State and religion. This is why you see Babylon and Baal. This is why you see the harlot on a beast. Not harlot and a beast. Harlot on a beast. This is why you see iron mixed in with clay. And this is why you see Antichrist and false prophet. So many people forget about the false prophet, but you got to take them together because Babylon is nation and religion. Vatican, for example. So I dealt with that. I also dealt with another video dealing with the Antichrist. Who is the Antichrist? And I showed 5 characteristics that the Messiah must be. Now, before I even go into that again, real briefly, you Christians need to remove yourselves out of the passages that are dealing with the end times. Not even just the end time prophecies, but the end times meaning post-rapture is what I'm getting at. In other words, during Jacob's trouble, during the Great Tribulation period, those 7 years, you have to remove yourself from that. That's the only way you're going to understand the passages. The saints in those days will be the Jews, the unbelieving Jews who were left behind. 144,000, Satan returning to persecute the woman and her seed, etc., etc. The 2 witnesses are in Israel. Over and over and over, we see it's all about the Jews, not the Christian church or the saints per se. So you have to remove yourself out of it. That's the only way the passages are going to make sense to you. Now, I dealt with 5 characteristics that Orthodox Jews look for in the Messiah. If somebody comes claiming to the Messiah and they don't have all 5 of these attributes, the Jews are not going to listen. Number 1, the Messiah must be a Jew. Not just a regular Jew, but he has to be a descendant of David. So he's going to have to prove his lineage to David. Otherwise, the Jews won't listen. This is why Matthew, which is written to the Jews, the Gospel of Matthew, starts off with what? The genealogy of Jesus, and it has David in there. Again, Jews will not listen unless you can prove you're lying to David. So he has to be a Jew. For scriptural evidence that he has to be a Jew, he says that the Antichrist will not honor the God of his fathers. The only people who can say God of our fathers are the Jews. Because Gentiles, regardless if they convert to Judaism or if they're Christians, it doesn't matter. You cannot say God of our fathers because Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are not your father. Period. Only a Jew can say that. So Antichrist must be a Jew. Second thing, the Messiah must be king. He must be king. Not just king, but he must be world ruler. Because both the Psalms and Revelation say he will rule the nations with an iron rod. But he would also rule out of Israel. He'll be sitting on the throne of David. The Antichrist will be a world ruler. It's pretty straight obvious. The third thing that the Jews look for, the Messiah must also be high priest of the temple. This is why concerning the Antichrist, Daniel wrote about the lawless one who will set himself up in the temple. Jesus talked about the son of perdition who will come and he will stand in the holy place. He's talking about the Holy of Holies in the Jewish temple. In other words, he will set himself up as high priest. Another problem a lot of you Christians need to get away from is you think that the Antichrist is just going to bum rush his way and just take over Israel. No. He's literally showing these 5 characteristics to the Jews, and they will be convinced that he is their long-awaited Messiah. They will literally invite him in. So he must be high priest, king and high priest. Why? Because the Messiah is in the order of Melchizedek. He's in the order of Melchizedek. Only Melchizedek was both king and high priest. No one that was a king was also a high priest. No one that was a high priest was also a king. Only Melchizedek. So he must be a Jew of the line of David. He must be king. He must be high priest. The 4th thing is the Messiah must have a ministry of miracles. But concerning the Antichrist, it says he will come with lying wonders. In other words, he will have false miracles. Because the Jews are looking for this in their Messiah. Because that's the prophecy. And the book of Isaiah makes it very clear that the Messiah will have a ministry of miracles. The 5th and final thing, the main thing, is the Messiah must bring peace to Israel. He must bring peace to Israel. This is the one thing of the 5. This is the one thing the Jews certainly look for. And the Antichrist, the scriptures say he will destroy many with peace. Right? It says he will destroy many with peace. Also in the book of Daniel makes it clear, it seems to suggest, I should say, that the Antichrist will establish a peace treaty with Israel and I guess the rest of the world. But he will betray them in the midst of the week. In other words, in the 3.5-year period, he's going to betray the Jews. Then it's going to be the worst time in human history for the Jews, ever. It's going to be the worst time for all mankind, but for the Jews it's going to be worse than Rome, worse than Egypt, worse than Babylon, worse than Germany. It's going to be the worst time ever. And they're not going to have anywhere to flee. Unlike every time in the past, they can flee to another nation. How can you flee from a global tyrant? If he rules this nation, he rules that nation, he rules that nation, how can you flee jurisdiction? If he rules all the nations, there's nowhere for them to flee. And if you pay attention, you Christians, in the book of Revelation, there's nothing about Christians being around to help. There's nothing about anyone around to help. The scriptures say that the earth helps the Jews to flee. Not the church, not the spirit. It's the earth who literally helps the Jews to flee the land. So there will be a 3rd scattering. So I covered all of those things. Really, the focus, you have to understand what the Jews look for. Another thing that the Jews look for is, and this is the whole point of this video, one thing that the Jews look for is they expect Elijah to come before the Messiah. Now us Christians, we know Elijah has already come in the form of John the Baptist. But the Jews, Orthodox Jews, they don't believe that. They're still looking for a literal Elijah. Here is the point, the prophet Elijah. You have to sit back, ask yourself, who is the false prophet? Who is the false prophet written of in the book of Revelation? He has to be what the Jews are looking for, Elijah.